well, this is Santa Fe. But I want to welcome you all and tell you, each of you, we're so thankful that you're here, thankful for your membership and what you do to support the club. I think you'll see that in responding to the member satisfaction survey, which the board does every year, or at least every year since I've been involved, is we take the comments from our members very, very seriously, both in terms of quantitative and qualitative analysis, which that's Joe Forehand's specialty, and he's going to get into it a little bit. I also want to say that from the board's leadership, that we intend this not to be, even though this may be the first one of this magnitude, it's not going to be the last. And I think you'll hear not only from the Greens Committee, but every other functional area of the club represented by a committee, that you'll see, whether they're lunch and learns or meetings like this. And Joe remarked earlier, this is one of the biggest meetings we had without a free dinner or an open bar. But we do really appreciate you being here, and you can count on meetings like this throughout the school year, so to speak. And I know we have some that Margaret Holban, who's a board member sitting in the back of the room, that chairs Imagine Tomorrow, food and beverage, tennis, racket sports, health and fitness, and other areas that you'll see sessions and events like this for in the months to come. I think one of the things that's important from this event to know is, let me advance the slide here, sorry, is from a Greens Committee perspective, and I'll introduce them in a minute, they may not want to stand up, but we could at least have you recognize them. And I'm not trying to be a comedian here. I think one of the things that when we sat down with the new Greens Committee at the beginning of this session, or this annual year for the club, to a T, and they may be embarrassed when I introduced them, they all said that they were here because they want to represent all members of all skill levels, all levels of experience. Some members play 200 rounds a year, some play less than 20. And it's our job and our responsibility to represent all golfers, all skill levels, and understanding that among those different groups of people, they all have different expectations of what good looks like and what bad looks like. So just to guide you a little bit through the agenda, the remarks of mine are going to be brief. Then Joe Forehand again is going to give a recap of our member survey, our reaction to it, and action plans. Tom Engelhoff in his sessions will consume most of the time today talking about agronomy and some of the issues that I think are very important to you and why you're here. Again, we'll talk about some of the other elements of the irrigation plan, sunset or sunrise back 9, what our plans are on that, which we already talked about briefly at the annual meeting a month or so ago. The winter action plan, which if you read the board notes, you saw the results of the winter action plan. And Brad Larson will talk about the golf operations. So again, reminding everyone that we combined greens and golf last year. Joe Forehand and I and several other members in the room, and including our president Mike Hodges, attended all these meetings, and we decided that for a variety of reasons the groups needed to be combined, or else not needed to be, but we would work better and more efficiently if they were combined. It's not new, other clubs do it. This club has done it in the past, and we looked at the talent we have both in the agronomy staff and obviously our director of golf and his length of experience not only here but in other premier clubs in terms of running events and understanding how good golf courses operates, because he's played on most of them. It was relevant that we could actually help not only Brad, Tom, and then Al in the time he spends with the different committees and being more effective and efficient in how we run that. And in fact, one of the things that struck us was that it seemed like there was always a frustrating moment sometime in the end of first quarter where we laid side by side the tournament and event schedule along with the aeration schedule and realized, Houston, we may have a little problem here and adjustment. So just one little element of the business function of the committees that we thought that drove us to that decision. Also with us today is Dr. Brent Lanauer. He's with the New Mexico State University, and for those of you that have seen what looks like suitcases on sunset number 2 and sunset number 6, he's really an expert in irrigation, and we'll talk a little bit more about the project going on there. And if you watched several different USGA events, the USGA Senior, and there was one other amateur event, Brett and Tom were both featured on a 90-second or 120-second kind of commercial about how advanced we are at Las Campanas in terms of water management and water conservation. So here is the Greens Committee. I'm privileged and honored as not only a board member, but to chair the committee along with Joe Forehand. And then with us today is Lori Good, Mary Chowning, Marta Davis, Jim Samus, Russ Campion, and then Brad Lardon and Tom Ingloff also are very important members of the committee. When we went around the room, I mentioned that every one of these committee members talked about representing all members, but it was interesting listening to their golf course resume, that in tallying up the number of clubs that they either are currently members or have been members, it's just under 50 clubs in the country and some around the world that represents the memberships of the people on the Greens Committee. And I might add, they were not kicked out of any of them. They all chose to volunteer. I'm not going to read slides. That insults anyone's intelligence, but I did talk about the charter, the agronomy responsibility. We are not golf course architects and designers in the Greens Committee. A lot of clubs get into that with regard to their Greens Committee and so-called experts. That's not our job. Our job is to support the agronomy staff, see that they get what they need, make sure that we're looking at everything available to us to keep the golf courses in the premier status that our members deserve. And then golf operations, and we already explained that, and Brad's going to go into that in a lot more detail. Again, I can only emphasize that the fact is, from a committee perspective, we represent all the members, regardless of skills, club head speed, whether they 3-putt, whether they use the course every day or just a couple of times in the summer. That's our responsibility and a charge that we readily accept. So, with that, Joe Forehand.
Thank you, Dave. I always hate to follow a formal radio, but I'm going to do my best.
John, you need to be a little closer to the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Now we can.
This okay?
Over
that. How about here? Is that okay?
That's good.
Okay, so we've been members 22 years here. Love the place. I'm a passionate golfer. It's been a long time. I started playing when I was 12 years old, and my dad took me to a local beauty course.
You gotta keep your mouth.
But one of the things, and I've been in a lot of clubs over 40 years, one of the things I like about this club, as Dave said, is the diversity of the membership. I love seeing people come here, pick up the game for the first time, taking lessons, up on the clinic range. It's fun to see all of that happening. But as Dave said, we have a very diverse membership with a lot of different interests. So, and you've told us a lot in the member survey. We use club benchmarking to run our member survey. You all participated in that in June and July. We have, out of that, we had 565 responses from golf members. And we figure the total golfing population here is around 800. So it's a very good participation rate in that survey. So with that, what did you tell us? I'm going backwards here. There we go. So let's peel the onion, if you will. There are 3 categories that we measure as golf satisfaction. The headline is that overall satisfaction with our golf program is high, but is declining. Okay? And we want to be very transparent with you. We want your engagement. And that's part of what this is the first step to accomplish. Golf shot performance had a decline, 2% from last year. Sunset conditions are roughly 5.5%. Sunrise conditions at 9.3% decline from last year. Now, the experts at club benchmarking would tell you that if you have a dues increase for upgrades to the club, and then we close the log cabin, we disrupt Sunrise, that you're probably going to inflict pain and not have a good member satisfaction result. However, you gave us a lot of good feedback that's independent of any of the disruption caused by the situation on Sunrise, and so we're going to talk about that. On the course conditions, Sunset was over 90%, which was consistent with prior years. The bunkers had a 12% decline on Sunset, 10% decline on Sunrise, you see. So, you know, we got hammered pretty good on the bunkers. And if you look at June and July, in that period when the member survey occurred, we were fighting a lot of issues. But I think you'll agree with me that Tom and Bryce and Alex have done a great job on the bunkers in the last 6 or 7 weeks to get them much more playable and consistent. You know, still work to do. On Sunrise, you know, we're down at 85%, 7% decline from last year. You know, that number needs to get up above 90%. I think with the plans we've got for Sunrise next year, it will. But we're going to talk more about that. In fact, I think with some of the changes in the holes, some of the holes design, some of the new irrigation, what's going to do turf conditions. I was telling Dave earlier and Brad that, you know, Sunrise could very well rival Sunset as the #1 course in our state. So it's really coming along. Frequency of communication on course conditions was down 10%. Hopefully today is a start, you know, to working on that. Our golf staff performance is still very high at 91.5%, but that declined 4.3%. Merchandise has been a little bit of a chronic complaint. Satisfaction is 63%. Pricing is one of the issues there. Brad's going to cover the merchandising philosophy and what we're trying to do there. So as I said, 565 golf members completed the survey. We got 482 comments. So you told us a lot, and I would encourage you all to continue to give us comments, give us feedback, the non-quantitative. Believe me, we've all at this table read every one of those comments, and they're helpful of us to try to sort out, you know, what programs we're going to implement as we go forward. If you look at, a lot of those are very positive. 20% of those comments are positive. We always get a good feedback on the staff, friendliness of the staff, a lot of positive feedback there, which is helpful. We had some positive comments on the improvement of place of play that people experienced. We did, if you look at the negative comments, or at least suggestions or criticism, lots of those roughly averaging 0.67 per respondent. So we had a lot of activity on the comments, which is good. That's what we need. Now, if you look at where they fall, I tried to group them into some broad categories. You know, 68% of them fell in the other category. Now, what does that mean? Lots of onesies and twosies, lots of comments that maybe 3 or 4 of the same issue. They didn't hit the 1% threshold. I spelled it out if it hit the 1% threshold. Things like, putting all that fruit punch Gatorade, you know, have a good mix, lemon, lime, orange. And I noticed this week, 2 times playing Sunset, we had a nice mixture of, so, I mean, Al rigs this stuff, and Brad rigs this stuff, and Tom does, so we've made some progress on Gatorade this week. I would also say some things that, you know, like a half a dozen or so people mentioned the fact that we didn't have yardage boards up on the range earlier this summer. Well, if you remember, it was pretty windy, and the wind kept blowing the numbers away. So we actually had a meeting yesterday. Brad and Dave and I and Joe started looking at, okay, what alternative solutions would we have to get get our yardage markers more functional and effective on the range. And so we're working on that. That's just another example. A few comments like, make sure dub bars are stocked and all that stuff. So we look at all this stuff and try to figure out and triage all these under the other category. As you expect, markers is the biggest identifiable one that hit over the 1% threshold. Tom will cover some of that. Food and beverage was next. Most of those, or a lot of those, was a situation that Sunrise 9 turned. And we do have to get better. We've been talking about some of the ideas there, but we got to get the food and beverage side of the Sunrise turn improved, basically. So we are on the case there. Brand's going to talk about more, but still a high degree of complaints about pace of play. And as Dave said earlier, we're trying to make sure we get the best golf experience for 800 people population. And if a pace of play issue comes up on a morning foursome, you're impacting 50 or 60 people down the tee sheet. So that's why we have to keep looking at the whole of this thing and make sure those 50 or 60 don't come in with a 4.5 hour round. Brad will discuss that. Dave will cover Brad will cover merchandise, what we're doing there, as well as Dave covering winter operations and what we're planning on the Sunrise availability next year. At the bottom, to hit the 1% threshold, was club cleaning. And hopefully you're seeing your clubs being 20 more already as we speak. So we're trying to be very transparent with you. We want your ideas, continue to give us input, even outside the annual member survey. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom. And I think we all should really give a round of applause for Tom and Alex and Bryce. They've done a heroic job for the last 6 weeks trying to manage a pretty stressful situation on them, on their staff, to try to get the courses back to where they are today, which I think are pretty good. So with that, thanks guys.
Tommy, what hold this? Not with me. I would say one of the jobs I had originally starting out that I failed miserably on was in going over the agenda. Particularly as Tom goes through his presentation, we know that there's going to be, or we can assume that there's going to be questions and comments at the end. And stating that, if you do have any, please hold them to the end, because we have allotted half the time this afternoon for questions, answers, comments, suggestions, and what have you. So, Tom?
I'm on a time limit here, so I'll try to do the best I can. I'm going to be talking a little bit about some useful facts that maybe some of you don't know about Las Campanas. I'm going to have the shortest presentation on water ever presented here, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about summer heat and what we deal with our cultural practices. We'll talk a little bit about our POA battle, and I'm going to talk about bunkers, everybody's favorite subject. Wrong way. Wrong direction. Wrong way. Useful facts, fun facts. I'm not going to read them all. I'll give you a little time to kind of look at them, and we're also going to make this available, right? The presentation will be available. Some pretty cool stuff here. Maybe some of the familiar faces in the crowd probably know, but some of the newer people probably are not aware of. But yeah, good stuff. I think the 8,000 gallons of water that moves around under the ground every night is pretty impactful. The agronomy team's day starts around 4 or 5 in the morning, and first thing we do is check the computer, see if pumps are still running. It's bad news if pumps are still running by the time we get here. Could be anywhere from a 200-gallon leak to a 400-gallon leak to a 2,000-gallon leak. So a lot has to happen overnight to make our day go good.
How to hold the mic up.
More? Okay. So, without getting in the weeds, I'm going to do a real short water kind of overview. Generally, since turnover in our water conservation efforts, we use around 600 acre-feet a year of water. Last year was the lowest in 15 years, 465 acre-feet of water. This year, it's going to be a lot more. It's very weather dependent, but generally, those are our three sources that we use.
Can you read them?
Oh, read them. I can't see either. County water. We have a contract with the county. Generally, we use 300 acre-feet of county water every year. We get all the treated effluent that's produced in Las Campanas. That's a small portion, and then the rest is our San Juan Chama water that we lease from the Hickory Apache, and we divert it through our pump station at the Buckman Direct Diversion. This is kind of a little slice of the water that's available to the club on paper. San Juan Chama water, county water, city effluent, we have access to that. Normally that's just a backup supply. Co-op effluent and our Hickory Apache water. So we have quite a bit of water on paper that we can use from year to year. That's a good picture of the co-op effluent. For some reason, once it's discharging, it's that color, and a whole bunch of ducks come over and eat stuff. I don't know what it is, but yeah, pretty good. In this picture, it actually is a day where I'm transferring city effluent and our San Juan Chama water in the other pipe. And they both, the entry points are 5 pond and 14 pond. That's kind of a map of the property, and all the ponds are connected. And then down in the bottom left-hand corner is kind of the pipeline that brings them in. This is all automated, done on a computer. Anywhere I have cell service or Wi-Fi. All the ponds are monitored 24 hours a day, level, and I can open and close valves remotely. That was the fastest water presentation. So we're going to talk a little bit about this summer, tail end of June and July. This is what we use, kind of the scientific method that we use to determine our water needs on a daily basis. ET is what we use. Those little white weather stations you see around up at the practice range. I guess that might be the only one you see. But it measures ET. ET's determined by solar radiation, humidity, temperature, and spits out a number. And we use that to try to replace what is evaporated from a daily basis. That kind of gives you an idea of how bad this July was, a historically bad ET month for us. Last we kind of compared to last year, pretty bad. That when weather gets this bad, it gets hard for us to replace what's evaporated on a daily basis. There's not enough time in the day to run water at night to replace what is evaporated. That's why You saw a lot of brown areas. Pretty historically bad. And down at the bottom there, that 129 acre feet of water in July was a record. That's the most we've ever used in 1 month period. So when we talk about replacing the water, we got to get the water down this profile to get to the roots. And what we battle what you see, and then about 4 or 5 inches under the ground. So we're managing above ground and below ground. And this was probably about 5 or 6 years ago when we decided to get aggressive with our cultural practices and sand top dressing. About 2 or 3 inches down, you can see the discoloration, and that's thatch. Thatch is like dead material that's accumulated over time that prevents water from the surface working down to where we need it in the roots. So, I don't know, I'm losing track of time, but I think it was 2013-14 is when we started developing a more aggressive cultural practices. That's what it's like today. We've diluted just about the whole thatch layer. And that's when you see us out there in a big cloud of dust and you see a tractor going up and down the fairways and spread the sand. We've diluted it through sand top dressing and all of our cultural practices. This is our VC60 verticutters on fairways, core aerification on fairways, grading, verticutting on greens, sand top dressing. That's us brushing the sand in on a green. Core aerification on tees. More tees. And deep tine aerification. So our program right now in the spring, greens, get deep tined aerified, solid tine, then we core aerify, then we sand top dress. Tees get core aerified in the spring. Fairways and approaches get core aerified. Fall, we still do this on greens, then we verticut greens. Fairways get verticut in the fall, and then tees get core aerified again. Let's see. We're on to irrigation, but the amount of progress we've made with our cultural practices has been remarkable. Like, I can't tell you how much better the water works down, and over time, we're finding that even when we do aerify or verticut, the amount of thatch we're getting each time is getting less and less because we have to pick it up. So we've got a quantity that we can see that it's getting better and better. So that has been a huge improvement to our agronomy practices since, I would say, turnover. During the developer years, it was keep it as green as possible, sell lots, and try to do as least possible disruption. But kind of leading into that is the irrigation system. I don't know if you can see this, but this is what we started with. This is 1992. This is the kind of the plan of the original irrigation system with the main line and the transfer line right down the middle of the fairways. And in all respects, this was a really great design. Like they spent a lot of money on this, and you were able to water the bentgrass fairways separate from the tees, from the rough, and all the bunkers had small pop-ups. 7,000 sprinklers just on the Sunrise Golf Course. I talked to the superintendent that was here when it was put in, and no, money was not an object. They spent millions of dollars on this thing, and unfortunately, so that was put in '93. I came here in 2002. The whole thing was already compromised. Like, I really think it was too big to maintain. And all the first bunker renovation, all the pop-ups got taken out. All the ins and out heads that enabled you to water rough, separate from fairways, all those were taken out. And then over time, we found that the main line, which was, we were finding it's 6 or 7 feet down in the ground, right down the middle of the fairway. They used galvanized piping coming off of it, and the galvanized piping is rusting and leaking. And this is kind of what happens. This is in the middle of 17 fairway a couple years ago. So once we have a break, the soil gets displaced. It either goes into the pipe or gets shot out of the ground. And that's what you're left with. You see on the left-hand side, you see those risers, those two things coming up. That's galvanized pipe. And it's failing all the way down at the bottom of that hole. And a disclaimer, no employees were hurt working on any of this. So the OSHA people, no problems there. But the transfer line is the one that broke on this one. You can see it's shattered. And then the main irrigation line is above it. And we're finding another issue with the original design is the size of that irrigation line. It's only like a 3 or 4 inch pipe. So holes 13, 14, 15, 16 on sunrise, literally to water those holes takes 12 hours to do because of the pipe size. The volume of water that we can push is so small. There's, yeah, that's Bryce down there. He didn't get hurt fixing this. But the main line is above the transfer. This is another transfer line break. That's another little shot of the galvanized pipe that was used to pipe the quick couplers. This is what we're doing now. So we've gone away from PVC pipe and we're using HDPE pipe, but it all has to be fused at the surface and then dropped into the hole. But you can get an idea of the main line size is 12 inches. So the plan for sunrise irrigation is to be able to water an ET of 1/4 of an inch in 8 hours, which is about twice as fast as the current system that we have now. And that's what we have. That's about 3 weeks after it was finished. So the old system is still there, right down the middle of the fairway, been capped off, and the new system in around it. Super nice. It's kind of when Dave was talking, or maybe it was Joe, but there is a legitimate chance that next summer sunrise is going to look as good as it's ever looked. Talk a little bit about POA. So probably in 2016 we started, this is what we had. POA is adapted itself to be successful at what we do to provide putting conditions for you. It loves low mowing heights, it loves compaction, it loves high fertility. Yeah, it's a problem all across the world. That stuff is very tough to get rid of. That's kind of a close-up shot of it. We try to fight it because we have a hard time controlling the seat heads in the spring, which makes it a very, very unsmooth putting surface. It's more susceptible to disease, and it certainly doesn't like 90 degrees with low humidity. I'll show you in a little bit what happens to it. But so we took up the battle, and it's not like we didn't take up the battle, but there are several products out there that you can use that are readily available. The only problem is they're a little detrimental. You have to be very careful or it'll kill the bank grass that we want. So it's kind of close up, little seat heads there. This product came out first as a kind of a trial. So we got on the trial. This is about 2 years of the trial that we tried up at the GPC. This is probably 2017. So we had pretty good success. The square in the middle was sprayed and the outside perimeter wasn't. And this is 4 years later. You can see a little bit of POA in there. This is like last week. Some of the greens on sunrise. This is an interesting photo because down in the bottom right-hand corner you can see a circle. That's a new variety of bank grass. Everybody's like, the new varieties of bank grass do a better job of preventing POA. Well, it looks pretty good, but it really hasn't done anything to the POA around the outside of it. So there aren't too many options. You can strip your greens, you can treat your greens, and we chose to treat them because we saw some pretty good success with the POA cure. I try to tell everybody it's a battle, it's a war. You can win the battle from year to year, but to win the war, there aren't too many courses that have eliminated POA for good. You're always going to need to do something, and luckily we've had this product, and there's a couple more on the horizon that will help us keep it out. Bunkers. This is a slide that shows you what happens to POA in 90-degree heat, where the bank grass survived being dry and the POA checked out real quick. That's the new forward tee on number 5. You've probably seen it. So POA didn't survive, whereas the bank grass is more heat tolerant. Sunset bunkers. So this is we got 77 of them. The bunkers on Sunset and Sunrise were designed differently. Naturally, you can see the difference. And the Nicholas design team, when they were out doing the master plan, wanted to preserve the different characteristics of the two courses. So Sunset, grass down the faces, Sunrise, sand flashed up, which is interesting. I started at Muirfield Village in 1990. So at Muirfield Village in 1990, we had Sunrise bunkers. By the time I left in 2000, we had Sunset bunkers. So Nicholas has transitioned some of his courses to Sunset bunkers from Sunrise bunkers. The sand is from Ohio, Lake Erie. It's man-made, it's crushed. When we brought it out, we tried trains. I don't know, Dave, maybe we could have used Dave's help at that point, because 2 of our train cars somehow made it to Chicago and never made it to New Mexico. But, we wind up trucking the rest of it, and pretty big project. But the issue we have, we've got 2 different types of sand, and we're trying to produce playing conditions that are consistent across both courses, and they're maintained different. I'll show you here. Because of the depth of the bottoms of the bunkers on Sunset, we can't get our mechanical rake that has a rake on the back with 3 or 4 inch metal tines that turns the sand over on a daily basis on sunrise. Where sunset, Alex's guys use those caddy rakes that you see to rake those. And we've made some modifications to our maintenance, and I think it's paying off. Here's some pictures of sunrise. Pretty nice. Kind of partial to sunset, but I'm kind of warming up on sunrise golf course. So this is what we came up with. This is a weed eater with a tiller. So every Monday, Alex's guys go around all the bunkers, and they're tilling them up, trying to loosen the sand up 2 or 3 inches down, which keeps them less firm. We always hear there's not enough sand in there. There's probably 8 or 9 inches of sand in that bunker. This is one of the worst ones. It's 5 left greenside bunker, our number 5 on the sunset course. So we'll turn them over every Monday, and there for a while he was doing it twice a week. Well, we're finding this is keeping them less hard peeing. There's sunrise. Sunrise has 64 bunkers, but 3 times the amount of sand than sunset. His bunkers are almost all accessible with the trap rake. So his guys rake by hand the sides, and then they use the trap rake in the bottom. That sand is being sourced out of Colorado, different color, still angular sand, but pretty good. Those are the new ones on 3. There's 13. Those, we were talking about bunkers. So those bunkers have been redone twice since I've been here. Those on 13, and they're going to be redone again next year or this fall. And that's Jim from Nicholas Design. He's being tasked with the new bunkers being accessible to get down in and out of. So that's one of our main focuses of the bunker renovation is to make it so you guys can get in and out of them without throwing a hip or hauling a knee out. Yeah. But also that also guarantees that Bryce's guys can get the trap rake in, and that's the trap rake. You can kind of see what it does. It's got metal teeth on the back, so he's able to turn his over much easier than the guys on Sunset. But I would say Sunset, it's in the master plan to raise floors in those and get it so we can maintain them with the mechanical rig. Also, there's plans in the works to redo the ones at the practice park. But that machine there almost guarantees you uniformity from day to day. And that was it for me. How did I do?
Thank you, Tom. I guess we can hit the bar early. You finished so much earlier than we thought. There's still plenty of room for Brad and Al and questions and answers. So Tom touched on it. We talked about this a little bit at the annual meeting, although we needed to fill in a lot of blanks in terms of timing on other projects at the club. But in looking at, in retrospect, at lessons learned on the front nine, and I think Tom's picture said many thousand words in terms of the degree of difficulty. I think, like I said at the annual meeting, this wasn't just a sprinkler system redo. We could have almost done a whole subdivision in terms of water mains and water lines that we strung in support of these, I would say, sprinkler systems of these main lines that move the enormous amount of water. We, in the Greens Committee, we were talking about acre feet, which I have no clue what that means, and I doubt that many of you do too, other than know what the words mean. But I did the math, and it was 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools that we put on this course every day during the summer, if to give you any idea and context to how much water we move. And it all has to be moved from the sources that Tom talked about through our pumping systems. So, okay, so what are we talking about here? Well, bottom line is we're going to start earlier and finish earlier. It makes total sense. I think we really did spend a lot of time on making this decision, and I said there were probably 3 or 4 different prongs or legs of this stool in terms of why would we do it, how are we timing it, how does it fit the club's financial plan on financing or paying for it. But in the end, it came down to something Joe Forehand said. It's member satisfaction. It's getting the Sunrise back nine open earlier so we can get open by May 1. We had a long meeting with the 2 main principals of the 2 contracting groups we're using. And again, I'll keep going back to lessons learned, but the degree of difficulty on the front 9 was something we didn't fathom. There were some other things that Tom covered that we just didn't foresee. We think we picked the right horses in this race with the 2 contractors. They're fully committed to making this happen and getting done by May 1 so that we have complete use of both courses. It's just going to start a little bit sooner than we thought. We are going to save our mobilization costs. I think you can see in the reduced size picture that the contractors are working on a small project while they're gone between finishing up number 6 on Sunrise and then coming back for the September 15th start. But we're saving about $100,000 by having them keep their equipment here and not having to remobilize to start this additional project. So one of the other items on this project that a lot of people were not aware of, and quite frankly I was not either, that the back nine of Sunrise also serves the practice range, which for any of you that spent much time up there, you can see that the brown spots on it are really tough. And you correlate that with the condition of the front 9 of Sunrise, now with the back 9 of Sunrise, and it's like the tale of 2 cities up there right now in terms of the quality of the rough, the distribution of the water, and the total quality of the golf course that we have now, and still in a hot summer. And we can only envision what the back 9 is going to look like when we get it done, because right now I would say the back 9 is on its 9th of 9 lives, and in fact both these sprinkler systems were. So but I know if we have questions about it, we'll be glad to answer, but that was the rationale and the reasons we're doing it, and to advance it and to open up sooner. Winter Action Plan, this was unanimously approved by the Greens Committee and the board to stay with the same Winter Action Plan we had last year. We'll have the front loop open, we'll have the front 9 of Sunrise open for winter play. We will close the greens and sand cap them like we did last year. I think one of the big differences though is that we can make a big improvement of how we do our temporary greens. Last year it was not good. We'll take full responsibility for that. We were late making the call and late getting them prepped, and to think that our members were attempting to play on winter greens that had been aerated, verticut, and it hadn't really been cut down to a stem of an 8 or a 9 and semi-puttable, was something we could have done differently. We fully admit that. But I think this year by starting the mowing, and Tom, if you have a question, not Tom, if you have a question, if there's a question to Tom about how soon do you have to start and how much grass can you cut at one time to get it down to an 8 or a 9 stem, I'm sure Tom can answer that question. But we'll be starting that fairly soon. Tom can give you the date when it starts, and it all depends on how much grass we're taking off the greens and the fairways, because as the temperatures start to change and get cooler, the way we manage agronomy is by how much grass is coming off when we mow, and that's how we make a lot of the decisions. So, let's see, got one more slide there. Yeah, it's really the same thing we did last year with the improvement of the temporary greens and the fact that we're going to ask people to keep their golf carts, the push carts off of the greens. We didn't quite have that last year, and I can understand why, because they really didn't look like greens. Okay, before we get to Q&A, we have two more items on the agenda. Brad's going to talk about the golf operations, and then we're going to let our general manager, Al Antonis, say a few words.
Thanks, Dave. Great to have everybody out today. So I just wanted to go over a couple things in the golf operation that you may or may not be aware of. It's kind of a couple key topics that we address, not just at Las Campanas, but at any of the clubs I've been at over the last 30 years. So we'll start with our favorite, which is pace of play, which is an issue at every single club in America. We're always trying to address it as best we can. It's a difficult subject to address. We want to take care, we want the rounds to be what the majority of the members want them to be. You know, sub 4 hours, 4 hours, 4:15 is our standard on sunset. And most of you plan that amount of time. But we do try our best to find different systems. So this year, we actually did a different system. It was called specifically on sunset, which is our biggest problem course. And so what we did was we originally started with checkpoints at 3 grain, and our marshal would stand out there or sit out there in his cart, and he would time every group as they came through. But we quickly figured out that everybody's doing well through the first 3. Then they get a little more tired. So we moved the first checkpoint to the outpost, basically at 6 grain. And at the end of every day, I get a T-sheet from the marshals, John predominantly, and I have their checkpoint times, and then those groups that are struggling on the checkpoint time, those are the groups we pay attention to. And frequently I'll say, we didn't see any marshals. Well, if I hear you didn't see any marshals, then I know you were playing in a proper pace of play because they didn't have to pay attention to you. So if you're not seeing them, they are there and they're checking times. And I think we had some progress with this system. I don't think it's a perfect system yet, and we continue to try to morph this system. The pace of play from 12 green to 18 on sunset does slow down toward the end of the day. So we're continually trying to improve this. We're doing the best we can. We don't need to harass anybody when we're trying to enforce the pace of play. It's probably the least favorite part of any of our jobs is addressing this. But it's something that I've been asked to address, and I coach up my staff, and we do the best we can. It's not perfect, but we try to get a little better every year. And I think the pace of play overall the last several years has gotten a little better every year. So that's really kind of the points on that. So it's a checkpoint system. The groups that don't make the checkpoint, those are the groups we're going to be paying attention to. Regarding merchandise, so merchandise is always a tricky one. Merchandising morphs and changes from season to season, from club to club. We learn the membership, we learn the new memberships, we learn what they like, what they don't like. We're also trying to introduce kind of the latest, greatest every season. So we're generally from season to season, we're taking out a few lines, we're adding in a few new lines. What we're doing as a group is morphing. We're putting a little more athleisure wear in the golf shop, so it's not strictly golf attire, right? So whether that's some yoga pants or some t-shirts or sweatshirts. So we're trying to be progressive on what we do. We definitely hear what you guys say. I appreciate what you say, whether it's constructive criticism or, hey, great, nice to see all that sunscreen apparel you guys have in there this year. So my philosophy is if you can buy it at Steinmart, you're not going to see it here. That's kind of my one big criteria. I want us to have a nice quality of clothing. We try to have different price points from a lower, not the lowest, but to a mid. So we have different levels. We try to bring in different styles from year to year, from season to season. And that's always challenging because the things you want are changing too from season to season. So we listen to you and we try to just keep as current as we can and keep a nice variety of styling, of price points there available for you. So keep your feedback coming because I totally appreciate it. As far as our instructional programming, that's something that I think's come a long way in the last several years. We try to be really progressive. I think we've been very good on modernizing the instruction here at the club, as have a lot of clubs around the country. We're definitely trending toward more clinics, more on golf course time, We still do our private lessons, but we're definitely seeing less of that happening. I think the social aspect of clinics is something that a large majority of the members enjoys. It's less stressful sometimes. If you have somebody going through the same situation you are, as we try to correct it. But there's 6 of us that teach here at the club. Tom does a lot of the teaching. I do a fair amount of the teaching. Everybody else does some teaching as well. Our clinics are really trying to address every demographic of the club, every level of play at the club. And one of the beautiful things that we've seen here over the years, this is my 8th season, it's hard to believe. Time's flying for us, Al. Al came in a few weeks before I did, 2016. So we've watched the women's program really flourish over the years. My first year here, we had, I believe, 8 teams in the women's member guest. We fluctuated between like 27 and 32 or 3 the last few years. Depends on how many of Marta's friends she brings from Sacramento. So there's a little variable there. But our 4-hole ladies program has exploded in the last several years to the point where it's twice a week now. And it's been a great introduction for gals getting either into golf or back into golf. And several of the ladies have advanced to 9-holers or 18-holers. What was once maybe a 16-person WGA, we probably have about 80 on our list now. So that's come a long way, and it continues to be a very important focus for us and something we will continue to address, try to grow, and try to just make as fun as we can make it. The events we do here at the club, it's an action-packed 3 months. Basically, we starting our first tournaments Memorial Day weekend, ending our last tournament tomorrow. We were going to do one more. We were going to do a fall member, but with the change of the schedule, we're going to move the Aspen. We want to start it on a non-aerified course. We're going to start that next season. But the tournaments that we do, we try to keep them light, keep them fun. There's a few traditional, more serious tournaments, both the member guests, the club championship. But as you'll see, for those of you that are playing tomorrow, we want you entertained, we want you to have fun, we want to see you smile, and we want to just put on a nice show. So, at Las Campanas here in the summer, there is something going on, not just throughout the club, but in the golf department, whether it's a clinic, a tournament. There's something almost every single day for somebody, and we continue to try to morph these programs and grow them in the direction that you guys want based on the feedback you've been giving us, so thank you for that. Our practice park, as I think Joe alluded to earlier, we definitely heard some criticism about the yardages weren't out there, and we did have them out there, and they're now scattered all over Las Campanas due to the incredible June winds that we had this year. So we're looking into some GPS LED alternatives that we could put on each of the stands. So we're going to get a sample of that and try to make something that withstands all our weather conditions here at the club. We're always trying to enhance the practice park and make it as good as we can for you. We'll probably put a few more targets out there. We've had a request for some more benching out there, so we'll add a few benches this next season for seating. We won't be able to build a roof over them, but we'll at least get you sat. So we're doing the best we can. This winter, it will be our second winter where the GPC will be open 7 days a week, 10 to 4 in the winter hours. I don't know, not every one of you is probably aware, but we upgraded our simulator from our old antiquated About Golf simulator to a new TrackMan simulator, which gives very accurate quality data, as well as the graphics are amazing if you've not seen it. come ask us to set it up for you. So it will be set up on the range function every day during the winter season. And for those that want to reserve space for an hour or two and maybe play 9 holes at your favorite course that we have on there, the graphics really are amazing on it. It is close to playing out here as you can get without playing out here. So we're always trying to add to what we do. We will have some winter programming, as we always do. We try to enhance that, try to get your fitness a little better in the winter. I could use a little of that myself, so I'll be participating with you. Tom and I will have some clinics running that we can in the winter. We'll try to work on those of you that want to try to hit a little farther. The winter time is a great time if you're trying to reconstruct anything on your golf swing, because you have a few months to do it and you won't be conscious on the course of trying to perform while you're trying to learn something new in your golf swing. We will also be, when the weather is permitting, if we see a nice day coming up, we'll be trying to take a few groups down to Albuquerque, just like we did this last season. So whether it's Albuquerque Country Club or Cochiti or any of the numerous options down there, try to take a little road trip with you and have some lunch and make it a fun afternoon. That's fun for the staff and I to do, and it's a nice way to get to spend a few extra hours with you that we don't on a day-to-day basis out here when we're just seeing you come in and go out. But with that, that's really a lot of what we deal with here in the golf shop. We do appreciate your feedback. I appreciate the feedback either side, whether it's positive or constructive, that you've given me the last 8 years. And thanks for being here today. It's nice to know you guys care so much. And with that, I will hand it off to Al.
Thanks. It was kind of funny with everybody talking about slow play. Every time I play golf, the slowest group of the day is ahead of me, and the fastest group of the day is behind me, no matter where I play. It is just kind of funny. Many of you know, if you see me at the club or you see Brad or anybody in the guys in the golf shop, please just let us know if you notice something that we can improve that day. I think what you don't realize, and maybe some people might not feel comfortable doing, is just sharing that feedback, because we typically will move on it almost immediately. So we have a little paging system that we'll use for some of the food and beverage staff and for the golf staff. And we'll literally jump on it. So I'll have members say, I was at the dog park today, the latch is broken. Great, I call Tom and he'll have one of the guys go over there and fix it so it doesn't go through the rest of the day. So anything that we can fix in a timely manner, we do it. Or we'll put a temporary fix on until we can get that. And that goes for the golf course too. During the survey, it was interesting, they said the food selection at the Torion this year, or the Torion for the Sunrise thing, has not been what it was last year. But we didn't open it until July 15th this year. So by the time the survey went out, we weren't really open because we had the 9 holes, and they just were looping around differently than they would have if they came off 9 green. So the comments are really good. We do read through every single one of them to say, how can we improve whatever we're doing today? Can we be better tomorrow? Can we be better next week? Can we make it better for the next season? We put in the Outpost Grill this season, and the smash burgers and the hot dogs and the things were great. And it's funny because you even see me out just doing some test loops around and I'll bring products without the Outpost since that closed when the summer kids went back to the school. And it's fun for me to drive around, first of all, because I can see everybody and I understand golf, unlike some of the young, seasonal workers that we have that don't really understand golf, and they just see a group and like, whoa, they want to just drive right up to you and see you, and they're going to interrupt your shot, and they're going to do all this stuff. So it's more complicated when that little cart is going around than when the Outpost is there. But the comments that we got on the thing were, we love the burgers, but this can't be a moneymaker. And it's like, it was never intended to be a moneymaker. And most of the things we do here don't make money. It is about the member experience. So We got the first feedback in the first week. They didn't want to get dinged for slow play, so they didn't want to stop for a burger. So we made 4, like immediately after the group left. He would cook another 4, so they were fresh 4, ready to go. But sometimes people didn't know that, and again, they were just wanted to zoom ahead. Sometimes based on when they teed off, it just didn't fit in with what they want to do. They didn't want to have a hamburger smash burger at 9:15. By the time they got around, they've only got 3 holes left, and they're saying, no, we're all going to eat together inside. But you've got to take the feedback from the people to make the adjustments. Otherwise, it would be a waste of money and a waste of time to do that. But it was for the people who enjoyed it, and it hit in that sweet spot of when they were really hungry and they smelled that guy cooking, the smash burgers. It worked really, really well. We need to have the soda stocked better. So Diet Coke in that room has to be there. It's the most popular soda item, and it runs out. Okay, well, we've got to have a couple cases until we can get the new unit up there, but just to replace them with the Diet Cokes. It's not big stuff. In fact, it's a lot of little stuff that we just have to do better, do consistently better. And so when we do go through the whole survey, we take the feedback, comments. That's why Chef last year changed the variety up like he did and changed the menu up. And again, with club benchmarking, that chef's scores went up 6 points or something, in the food. Really hard to do with a community club versus just a regular club because they have different choices. But here, they come here a lot. In fact, we see people, 4 or 5 times a day, not even a week. And so they'll come regularly. So we have to mix it up. And for that reason, he's introduced the variety to the menu. It makes it tough for the servers, again, whose only food and beverage experience is a drive-through on Cerritos Road. They don't know fine dining. And you're trying to tell them this menu. And again, the ingredients, I have to look them up half the time or go back and ask, because I have no idea what he's putting into these things. There are all sorts of different ingredients. And that's one of the challenges that, again, we're taking the feedback from the different members on far as server knowledge and server capability. If you're able to, this Sunday between 11 and 4, stop by the log cabin. So you'll see that really ready to roll. It'll be open a week from Sunday for a la carte dining. We'll start doing that up. We want to figure out things during the week as we take reservations, but it's exciting. But again, it's one of those things we actually thought we were going to have that open earlier this summer and have dual operations going while we had the extra kids here for the summer, so that you wouldn't have to wait as long to get into the time slot if you kind of wanted to. You could go into both times. Can't do that with a golf course. You only get a tee time, and you got to move around and you got to keep in that play. With our members, they can walk in, and if they didn't have a reservation, there's seats at the bar. They can do that. You got to handle that. But I think that the teams, both agronomy, golf, food and beverage, housekeeping, everybody, spa and fitness, they can pivot. But if you give feedback, please, we don't view it as complaining or whatever. If they're really constructive criticism to help us get it right, that would be great. On a sad note, and a terribly sad note, one of the, Mario Mito passed away 2 days ago. And for those of you who play golf, and I assume most of you guys are here, he was a fixture here. And it's one of the great things about working in the club, but it's really one of the tough things. When you get to know people like this that are kind to all the golf staff and kind to everybody he saw here, he was kind. And he makes you better as a person when you can talk with guys like that. And members like that are just kind and they're generous. And it was a really big loss. If you see Freddie Klinghoffer was one of his best golfing buddies, just let him know. But that's the great thing that makes clubs, and you get to meet all these wonderful people that really can positively influence your life. But when you lose them, it's like losing multiple sets of grandparents that you probably spent more time than you actually do with your own family. And I can say that for sure, that I spent more time with you guys and the staff than I do with my family, but for the rest of us too. And it's what makes it great, it's what makes it great working here. But please give us your feedback. It is welcome at all times. I'm laughing at because I can see back here, it's like when he sees my card out there on the thing, he's always like, okay, can I get that Italian sandwich or whatever? And when Chef has those ready, that's the kind of feedback we want, and it really makes the ride that much more enjoyable out there. So we're going to be available for any type of questions that you might have. And with that, I thank you, and I really thank you for showing up on this beautiful day. We have 200 people showing up tonight to see the little silly thing that Alma made get burned up, which is a ride. So Tom, I promise, we're trying not to burn the golf course down. I said I do not want to be known as Mrs. O'Leary's cow in New Mexico. But it should be pretty fun out here. It should be pretty silly too. So thank you again for all your support, and thank you for showing up, because I think the more that you know, the more that you're able to, if you're with somebody and they mention something, you're able to dispel it and say, no, that's not actually it. Why don't you just check with Tom or Brad, and we can fill you in. And that's what we said earlier. I gave Pat, right? I gave him the cliff notes today. Hit it in the middle, hit for the middle of the green, and roll in a few putts. That's the takeaway for today. Just enjoy yourselves out there. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. I wonder if we've said this word a lot. We started talking about transparency, but now it's time for feedback. And so there's a couple other board members that were here. I failed to recognize Jim Staley, and then I think John Rizzo came in sometime during the presentation. Sorry. Yeah, I recognize. Yeah, I did mention him at the beginning, and everybody knows where he lives. So we're good. While we're on that line, I want to make sure everyone understands we do want your feedback. I know that Al and Tom get what we would refer to as drive-by comments on a regular basis. Anyone on the Greens Committee gets them. The Greens Committee's new. I think just so you and they know, under the tab in the club directory under governance, there's Greens Committee. Under Greens Committee, there's their names, there's their phone numbers, and email addresses. Just if there's someone in the Greens Committee you're familiar with and you want to drop some suggestions, have a question, that's one form. And we talked about the member survey, but now we have an open forum, a town hall type forum. The only reason I mention the email, or if you're not comfortable in a public setting asking a question or giving a comment, please take it up with a member of the Greens Committee, a member of the board. We do want to hear your feedbacks, your thoughts, your suggestions, and answer any questions you have. So, with that, any questions? Yes, sir. Russell. Yes, sir.
With the practice park being part of the Back 9 irrigation project, what effect will it have on the practice park availability this fall?
That was a great question, and I'm going to let Tom answer that.
The practice park. The practice park generally is the short game area. So we're going to redo all the irrigation around the short game, the three greens, the bunkers, and then redo the main lines going out to the range field, so that doesn't get changed at all. And we're going to try to do that in March. Okay. So we're going to try to address some drainage issues up there. If you've been up there after a rain and there's been a lake, we're going to try to fix that at the same time. But generally, we're staying cart path back towards 10.
It's a good point. I'll get to your question in just a second. I had it on the slide, but I neglected to mention as part of the irrigation plan, we also do 18 on sunset. It was on the slide, but I didn't mention it. It was built around the same time 18 on sunrise was. It's on the same irrigation system. And even though we're going to be playing the loop as part of winter operations, we think that for a 10-day period that we have 18 on sunset out of service, because the irrigation will just loop around the back of the pond and play 18 on sunrise as part of the winter plan. So Buck and then the handsome gentleman in the white shirt had a question after you.
Can you remind us just how much over budget the front line sunset was and how that happened? And then what are you doing to protect against that very same phenomenon for the back
Okay, but good question. The question's about over budget, so let's just talk about the definition of over budget. We, several years ago, almost during COVID, but pre-inflation, we gave an order of magnitude of what all Imagine Tomorrow was going to cost. And today that cost is up in line with other supply chain issues, supply issues, labor costs, and particularly regulated to what it cost here in Santa Fe, even though the contractors that are doing the irrigation came from Texas. So what we had in the capital reserve study was about $2.5 million per 9. That's something that we had for several years. It ended up coming in around more closer to $4.5 million. It wasn't that much different than what we came in with an actual budget at the time of the inflation and supply chain and material impact. So I just want to make sure in your question, over budget, we got into the same thing in discussions on a finance committee meeting or a finance lunch and learn with regard to over budget on the log cabin. So I want to make sure I answer your question and don't dodge the bullet. We came in on or near plan with very few changes, but it was a revised budget based on the current conditions at the time. And like we said, it was a great order of magnitude over what we originally thought in 4 or 5 years previous to this, when we were assembling what we thought the cost would be based on our a consultant that we've retained on what this project should cost. A lot of words, just want to make sure I don't back out on that answer.
Okay, and so what are you doing on the next time?
We pre-purchased some equipment, and not so much equipment. We repurposed 2 items that ended up being part of the delay, and we pre-purchased them to avoid a price increase. Wagner, well, they weren't Wagner valves, but it was some type of a valve and some of the other material that was in short supply. The other thing we're doing, like I said, is we changed the schedule so we didn't have a mobilization cost, which we had on the front end. And the other thing is, when we looked at $2.5 million or what per 9, when we had it in the capital reserve study, we really didn't have much of a bunker revision plan. And that could be a whole other question about why did you have to redo the bunkers and why are you spending $800,000 per 9 on bunker revisions. I'm not going to ask my own question, but that may be something that we put into the new amount that really wasn't in the original amount. And the other thing is the money for the transfer line and the main line wasn't in that $2.5 million. Okay, your eyes are glazing over, Buck. Tell me, you're a lawyer, so tell me.
I just want to know, do you have a higher level of comfort on the amount of money you're going to spend?
Well, I can give you the quick answer. I can give the mic to Tom, and you'll find the same thing out in 15 minutes. But yes, and what makes us that way is we sat down with them and really did a post-mortem and lessons learned. And like I said, pre-purchased equipment, everything that we could go in. We looked at the contingency on weather and every other thing. Now, Tom, you want to interrupt me?
Yeah, and the contract on the back 9 is a not to exceed number. So they can't exceed the number that they did without a change order.
It's a not to exceed. It's a fixed fee or agreed sum. That's probably the easiest answer. Buck, are you okay with that?
That's great.
All right. Okay. Yes, sir. Next to you.
Small issue compared to those big issues, but when I'm on the practice range, it seems like it just watered it. And so when I'm hitting the ball, my white shirt is no longer white. And I'm just wondering if they can't time the watering in the area a little different.
Yeah, just so everybody can hear, it's the issue on the practice range on the teeing area where it just seems like when you go hit, particularly with an early tee time, it's like we just watered it, right?
Yeah, part of the issue was that pipe size that I showed you. So that pipe, the old pipe size of the old irrigation system, 3-inch, new one 12, 10, 8 will enable us to water quicker, earlier, and it'll be hopefully drier by the time you come in the morning.
Second one was, do you put the yardage markers back on sunrise, on the cats?
Yeah, we have those on the way.
Those are coming?
Yes.
That's a Rainbird deal. That's an interesting thing I learned. Rainbird has kind of control on that. I thought we could buy our own machine, but apparently we have to buy them from Rainbird, or else we'd already done it ourselves. Another question? Yes, sir.
Special interest question, but a question. About 20% of our walking paths are also primary drainage routes, and after a rain, these walking paths are pretty much channeled down the middle, and they're like that for about 3 weeks till the guys get their compactor and they kind of smack them down again. Then it rains again, and they channel again, and I keep twisting my ankle. So on the 20% which are downhill, could we look at doing a proper solution which has a French drain down the path with some meshes of gravel? You won't have to do it every time. It won't rut when it rains, and I won't twist my ankle. And this has been like 3 years I've been pushing this in every member survey, and I know we've tried to attend it because I see your guys patting it down and trying to fix it, but they're not really fixing it. They're just sticking a band-aid on it.
We're in the process of evaluating all the trails.
Okay.
And once we get them all rerouted, that's the next step.
About
Try
20%
to-
look as drainage too.
Yeah.
It's just the slope.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to talk Al into letting us purchase some of the material that we have on the T-Rams.
Yeah.
That's impermeable to water.
Okay.
Water will.
Go ahead, go for it.
There you go.
Got the order. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Way, from where the push carts cross the golf trails or whatever, do you have just some ramps there? The guys that have their push carts or electric carts, I mean,
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry, Avi.
so when if I have a push cart, I need to cross the golf carts, the cement. Is there like a ramp that they can put so you push your little push cart and it's you lift it up and it bumps? It's just the convenience. Does it make sense?
Like a smooth curve.
Just the curve. It's just like a
hard edge.
Tom, you know how in some places on the golf course you have the concrete actually slopes so the golf cart will drive over the cart?
Yeah.
That type of thing should be done for the walking path to cross onto the next path.
Yes.
Break away the concrete with a angle.
Yeah. Like curves.
Right.
Yeah. So after we define the routing, we're still working on that. We'll try to enhance crossovers, curbs. Mainly, most of the curbs are there for water diversion, so the water doesn't come off. We've got some really difficult places.
Guys, we can do that. And the other thing is, you see there's cracks in the cart paths. We've been trying, I hate to say the word try, we've been trying very hard to get a contractor in to redo the cart paths. So it's not a matter of money. We've had it in the capital budget to do. It's just the demand on the concrete community here. We were fortunate to get a real good one for the log cabin. It's been just tough to get a contractor to break away from big projects to come out and do the piecemeal cart path repair, or else we'd have had the concrete repaired several years ago. Ken Francis, I think, had his hand up, and then
At the risk of some conference here, there is a report out from the USGA about course damage or problems caused by electric golf carts. And I would ask that we have a policy whereby people have to ride double in a golf cart. I see 3 and 4 golf carts out there with 3 or 4 individuals in each one. And I see them driving up on the greens all the time. Very close, yeah. They drive up on the top of the bunkers. Can't we mandate that you should double up in a golf cart?
you know, we'll take that under advisement. We'll take a look at the USGA report. We did talk about this both in the golf committee as we came on, and we decided that forcing people post-COVID, and I know this, hopefully this doesn't sound lame and covering my butt, but you still see people on airplanes and in public places wearing masks, and we were not at the point where we were going to mandate 2 people riding in a cart as a carryover from COVID. Now, we'll take a look at the report. If it makes sense, I think it's going to be a very difficult thing because some of our members have gotten used to what it does to pace of play, both on the speed of play And it's not something that I'm dismissing at this point on behalf of the Greens Committee, but I'm just saying it's going to be a long putt, particularly from, like I say, a post-COVID situation. Understand your point, and it's not the first time it's been brought up.
I'd be happy to forward that report to you if you need it. I happen to have a copy of it.
No, we can find it.
Yeah, well, one last thing. Is it in the bylaws that you have to ride singly in a car?
No, it is not. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Doug Strasser. I'd like to get a brief update on 12 Sunset and what the plans are there. I know that you're thinking of doing some new layouts. And one other thing, I'll just throw it in. The other day I'm coming off 18 Sunset, and as I got up to the starters area, another cart was coming out. And because of the trees being so heavy there, they didn't see me and I didn't see them. It was like that close. Could have been a head-on. So I don't know what we can do about that.
Well, Doug, that's a two-stroke penalty for two questions at once. The safety issue, we definitely have to take charge. It's a beautiful pinon tree. We've seen it a lot. We need to, it's risen as a safety issue, but I forgot what your first question was.
Status 12 Sunset.
Okay, yeah. You know, it's still something we want to do. It's, I think fiscal responsibility, back to Buck's question, it comes back down to, you know, the timing. We wanted to make sure we embarked on it. I think that we had strongly considered trying to start it this winter with moving dirt in 1 year and then coming back with turf and the green and the detail work in year 2. It's something we still want to do, but that, until we get the bids back on the spa and fitness center, which, again, to Buck's comment, might be a little bit higher than what we originally thought. And so fiscally, I don't want to hide behind the fact that, you know, Captain Obvious, we're all going to be fiscally responsible. We just want to see how it fits. It was about a $200,000 deal the last time we looked at it, a lot of it with our internal labor. But we also looked at starting that with internal labor and then trying to support the irrigation project on the back 9 and figuring, do we really have enough people to do both? So it's probably belts and suspenders, but an ultra conservative, but that's the reason why. We still want to do it. We think we have a great design. It's an exciting design. It's a misnomer to say we're going to restore the old fairway and green, because that's totally not true. It's going to be a new and improved with a shorter carryover, a smaller arroyo, and for those of you that's had a chance to talk to Gary or any member of the Greens Committee or to take a look at the Nicholas Master Plan, it's going to be a great hole when we get it done. But we don't want to embark on it until we can get it done in year 1 and year 2, and that's why we're taking maybe at least a year break, and we'll see where we are this time next year.
I think you get the priorities right.
Yeah, you think it should be a priority?
No. You said you.
Oh, you don't?
You have the priorities right.
You have it right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Now was that another question? Because that's another 2-stroke penalty. All right, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Just to reinforce, I applaud you delaying that, but I am curious, is the change mandatory to maintain the relationship with the Nicholas Design Group? And are they forcing our hand on it?
No, Jeff, I'm glad you asked that question, because it comes back to, I think I said at the annual meeting, are you just doing everything they say? I think for this group, it might be better just to have a side conversation on it. We're really happy with what they designed. There's various reasons why we did it. I touched on them really in rapid fire succession at the annual meeting, but we took a look at the opportunity we had with spending the money that we are on the irrigation system and saying, let's do what a lot of courses do and update or upgrade. Give me a high sign if I'm getting too much in the weeds here. So we had opportunities. We could have looked at Core Crenshaw. We could have looked at a lot of redo guys. I guess we could have gotten together and just, got a group together and done it on our own. That would have been ridiculous. So we do think we have a good plan. And now that we put it on the website, if there's aspects of the plan that you'd like to talk about, we could talk about. Did we do everything they said? No, but in line with someone like Jack Nicholas and their organization, we thought almost all the recommendations were pretty good. But I want to make sure I answer that question, and it might be a better private conversation. I'm glad to have that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned that you have access to city effluent now. Is that strictly for backup?
I think I can answer that one for Tom too.
It's the first general manager that's been able to answer water questions.
So we could theoretically.
We'll see if he can.
All right, we'll see if we can. Okay, so there'll be a point in time where the BDD goes under repairs based on the settlement that they have with the redesign, and having the ability during that period of time when they may be down to take literally unlimited amounts of the treated effluent from the city, but pay for it, is going to be critical to anything that we do here. So the answer is it can be a backup if there's high turbidity in the river and we can't pump from that. We'll take that, absolutely. It's not as, it's not as good as the Hickory water right out of the river, but blending it, and we learned from doing that too, like blending it in the different ponds. I think and Burns here, so it's like not to take advantage of his thing. It creates some different issues, and they found that out too when they were using it. And because it wasn't all in the quote the same system, 16 out of the 18 greens were treated a little differently with that water, and it just gave Alex a whole nother, like, wait a second, what is happening?
Fertility.
Yeah, the fertility. These greens are, now good news is we saved on fertilizer because you're getting higher fertility in the water, but it creates whole different things. Okay, this green has to get mowed twice as often as this one and rolled and whatever, but the answer is it doesn't have to be just backup. But
Well, the example you gave when the BDD is down is backup.
Yes.
yeah, in fact, then it's our primary source. Yeah,
Well,
it's backup. Yeah, it's
my
backup.
question then is, with the new irrigation systems that you're putting in, are you gonna be able to move that water, which is coming in all the way down at the end of Sunset, you'll be able to move it to the entire golf course?
Yeah, that's the NMED question. So the answer is yes. We'll be able to do that. So it's a little complicated. Yeah, we had a permit that had to get modified so that we could do that. But the answer is yes. We could use that throughout.
But physically, you can do it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, yeah. And many of you may know, or you may not know. And I'll give a little sidebar on what we did this summer. So. If you saw 2 years ago, Marty Sanchez was dinged really hard for using potable water to water their golf course. When we put this new pipeline in, it was basically mothballed when the co-op from Turnover, the co-op had mothballed this framework of pumps all the way up by the airport. There's a treatment plant. If you turn right and you don't go into the airport and you go straight a little bit, there's a treatment plant up there. And that's where we get the treated effluent from the city. It actually comes all the way from there, all the way down past Marty Sanchez, down to the club. Yeah, well, it used to go into, it used to go into kind of the co-op building area, and we diverted that and paid, I think at the time it was like $190,000 to re-pipe that system so that water could go straight into the pond on 14. And it's behind the dog park. It goes into 14 behind the dog park. And what we did at the time is we wanted to make sure that if Marty Sanchez ever got in trouble, we could actually pump them water from that pond. And so what we would do is we would take water from the BDD, goes into 14 pond, and then from there it goes pump it all the way up to Marty Sanchez. And we did that this summer for about, 30 days? 2 months. 2 months. And that way they didn't have to use potable water, but they could use raw water that was theirs, not ours, their allotment through the BDD. We were just using our booster station 2A, while ours would basically, we weren't pumping during the day, we pumped for them, or vice versa. So we actually were good neighbors and good members of the community that, again, a lot of things we don't go around and sort of like toot the horn, but it really did save them in a big way, and a lot of public outcry of them using potable water instead of raw water, and nobody really understood it except for Tom and the guys shifting the different valves, what was going on. But the Marty Sanchez folks and anybody who played there were able to play because of the club at Las Campanas for doing that work proactively 3 years ago. So it helped us to bring the treated effluent, but it really created this extra thing that we became a backup for them as well. Does that help?
What do you think, Mark? He knows a little bit. He knows a little bit.
Yeah.
a lot of interconnections have been made.
You say it's Republic
To Booster Station 2A through
Sanchez?
Yeah, through the old affluent line. They made a connection down where it crosses the road. So we, and what Al was saying with New Mexico Environmental Department, we had to modify our permit so we can take affluent all the way up to 4 now. So that we had to put that in place too.
You know, we get our share of bad press in Santa Fe. This would be nice to see in the paper that we're helping out.
It's okay.
Yeah. it helps in some respects, but
It's not worth it.
It isn't.
No.
Been there, done that kind of
Yes, exactly.
Like the country and western song, a lot of men tried, a lot of men died. It's a great idea, it's not worth it. Any other questions? Yes, sir, John.
What's the remaining life of our greens? I come from, I've been long enough in Texas, as you can tell from my accent. We tear out our greens every 10 years and replace them. So I'm just wondering, while we're doing all this magnificent wall of drainage, should we take the opportunity, if we need to redo our greens? So how much life is left?
You know, it's a good question. We need to get back to you on that. It's a matter of taking a course down for a better part of a year, what it costs, what the money we're spending right now, and it's something that we get asked that a lot. I mean, there's people that say, why can't we just go to POA? Like, I want to go to bed tonight and wake up tomorrow under POA. And I'm not trying to be foolish by saying that, but it's just there's elements of what you spend and what you go through. I think you're exactly right. People look at what's the average life of a green, and we need to come up with probably a better answer for that. We think right now we have one, because if you're comparing Texas, it gets 30 inches of rain versus 12 inches of rain. So it's an apples to apples deal that deserves a good answer.
Well, Ben Greens lost longer anyway.
Right.
Last time. What is their life? Is it 25 years, 50 years? I mean,
It needs a better answer than what we're prepared to give you right now. But let's take, Joe has the answer.
No, I don't have the answer, but if you look at a lot of that, the thinking that you had to replace greens after 30 years, the USGA specs, which most anybody that redoes greens now does with the current specs, they were far different 15, 20 years ago, much different 30 years ago. So if you build greens according to the USGA specs, and all the layers and all the drainage and all that, you know, they last a lot longer than they used to.
but ours aren't built like that, right?
I'm sorry?
Ours weren't built to that spec, right? So that's a good answer for when we do it again, but these weren't built to that spec.
Our greens were built USGA spec.
Oh, okay.
And about, I don't know, before we started the POA cure, we did core samples. From our standpoint, the first thing we look at is, do they percolate? Do they drain? We took core samples of Sunrise greens, sit them in, perfect. Like, as good as the day they were built, but we had to first battle the thatch problem. So that was our first battle. We've done that, they drained, then we were working on the surface.
Okay, thank you.
Gary?
I think the starting point is never, with good aggressive aeration that we have embarked on the last 6 years.
Burn would like to add Dave.
John, thanks for the question.
No, you're welcome.
Thanks, Gary. Yes, sir.
There are many factors that contribute to when and how greens are or have to be rebuilt.
Can you push your button or something? Can't hear you.
From a plant perspective, grasses tend to live for a long time because they go through rejuvenation. So in 3 years from now, you're actually looking at a different plant than what you looked at in the past. So what happens on golf courses with greens that they change over time due to maintenance. So some golf courses are not as aggressive with verification and top dressing than others. So your route zone changes, not for the better, most likely for the worse. And then maybe there is not much attention is being paid to how greens are being mowed. All of a sudden they become smaller or larger as your maintenance staff changes in does the cleaning cut around, and then through top dressing itself, you can elevate greens within a year, 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches. So all of a sudden, the playing of the golf courses, and most importantly, what the architect had in mind, envisioned about the golf courses changes drastically. And those are factors that play a major role in whether greens need to be rebuilt or not. It's not just on, well, it is the management side, but other factors play in, and just you have to replace one stand of grass with another stand.
John, I really appreciate you bringing that up. That was a thoughtful question, and one I think that we all learned a lot on. And we all know from either the driving range or the putting green, people walk around and says, everybody knows you have to replace them every X years, right? And we're thankful you asked that question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How is the new irrigation system performing? Are you satisfied with it? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? Anything different?
Oh, the guy that plays it.
Bryce.
Oh, Bryce.
Yeah, there's a lot of water to play with now. So it's really good. We're very happy with it. It's we're in the process of getting things mended up and healed up, and then it'll be time to start really diving into it. But it's very good.
He likes it.
Did you replace the winter system as well?
I'm sorry, sir?
I asked if the winter system was replaced as well.
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. And yes.
Okay, Doug, do you have any more questions? You're a buddy of mine. I'm kidding you. Sorry. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I just want to thank everyone on the dais for all the hard work that you do for all this.
No, glad you're alone, but thank you very much for being here. You're the ones that deserve the thanks. All right, everyone, thank you very much. Stay tuned for more sessions like this on other areas of the club. Stay tuned for the scheduling of this on a regular basis. And let's thank Margaret Hoban for chairing Imagine Tomorrow and getting the log cabin over the finish line, and go over there Sunday and have a great time. Thank you very much.